Welcome back. This time round I'm going to get back to the CPM machine that I started building quite a while ago actually. Going to look at putting it in a case of sorts, and yeah, and then in later episodes we'll move on to creating some, well, not creating but building some additional cards for it. The board itself is the fifth iteration of the N8, I think it's the N8 VEM single board computer. This is like version 2 of the machine, revision 5. So this one's been clocked at 10 meg, has 1 meg of flash, Zilog Z80 obviously, a peripheral adapter, an IDE port and a serial port, and it can either be powered over the bus or via DC jack on the front. In my case I'm going to power it over the bus. And over here we have a floppy disk controller, which also has, that's the IDE port, so extra IDE port, and a floppy disk port, so I can hook a 3.5-inch floppy drive up to it, which I do plan on doing. So yeah, we'll make a start on putting this thing into this enclosure that we can see the board sitting on. So one of the first things that will go in the enclosure is this 3.5-inch floppy drive. I've got a 3D printed sort of bezel around the front just to tidy it up, and then it's an old CPU board, because you order from the usual prototyping places, you get 5 boards, and I don't want to build 5. So I've used one of those just to slide the drive in on the rails, and then there's an adapter plate, which is just another piece of PCB itself, just to adapt the screw holes on the drive to the PCB that's going to slide into the chassis. I had to do that because otherwise there was no way I could get the screws in to the drive and back the other way at the same time. So, and it gave me something to attach the front bezel to. So that just slides in like this, just sort of clips in over the. It's just, I wouldn't say it's tight. There's just a little lip. There we go, and it's in. And that sits there. That sort of neatens the floppy drive up. The next thing to worry about in this machine is a power supply. Let's just clean some of this muck out of here. It's a little bit dirty. The power supply I'm planning on using is this one here. And I can't remember its specifications. I did look it up, and it has ample get up and go to power this machine. In fact, I had it jerry-rigged into this board some time ago when I first built it, so I know it's good for it. And the plan is to attach it to this circuit board that I had made, and that should slide in here like that. And the power supply attaches to the board, not like that, attaches to the board like that, and then we'll slide in. So obviously we've got to space this circuit board off the PCB. That's actually still has the copper on it, so we'll space that out, and I've got to hook an earth up. So I'm hoping that these pads are earth. I've just got to confirm in a minute that that is the case. We'll put some fresh cable on the mains input here because it got cut off previously. And I also have a back panel. Oh, and I have this insulating sheet that'll sort of sit under here. I think it goes that way. It'll sit under the power supply as well as right there we can see it, but an extra layer of protection. But we'll space the power supply off there anyway. And I have an AC inlet with a switch and a fuse. That's going to go basically in this panel, which will go around the back. So yeah, we'll make a start on putting this lot together. So just checking these pads here. Yep, we're working. So there's no continuity between them. No continuity, but looking at the case that this power supply previously came out of, which is this case here, the earth from the mains connector was connected to the case. The board didn't actually sit over this far. The board went in. The board went in sort of that way, so the earth was connected down in there, and each one of these pads was screwed down to the case. So it would appear this power supply might have been relying on the case to connect those 3 points together, which would suggest to me that we had better do the same. So I've gone ahead and mounted the power supply to the sort of the backing board that I'd created for it. So for the earthing, I'm using the copper layer on the board, and I've just cleaned away the solder mask and bolted the 3 points to that. I've connected the output rails to the appropriate rails on the board, and I've got the terminals here ready to go onto the mains connector and a lug to connect to the earth on the chassis. On the other side of the board, I've got there's 4 connectors here. The other one's actually attached to the backplane board, and 3 more connectors for future power. And I've got fuses on the 5 and the 12 volt rails. I think from memory the 5 volt one was, I think it's might be a 5 amp fuse. Oh, sorry, that's the 5 volt one. It might be a 5 amp fuse from memory, and the 12 was, I think, 2.5 was what I went with. There's also a fuse on the mains input, which we'll see shortly. So yeah, that's kind of bolted together as most of an assembly ready to go. And then we've got the back panel board. There's the fuse I was just talking about. And this bolts to, how's it go? Bolts sort of roughly like that. So we'll put that together in a second. So we'll get our, I suppose we'll do this one first. This is just a little piece of aluminium angle that I've cut and drilled to bolt into these. I was originally going to bolt it on these holes, but I forgot that with the depth of the power supply it was going to clash with this, so I had to move it over a bit, but that's no big deal. So that should attach that. That's right. So that basically goes on there. We won't do them up just yet. And then this goes on here. Did I put that on the right? No, I put it on the wrong way. I don't know that it matters, but when I fitted it up, it was the other way around, so that's what we'll do. So it's supposed to go. I'm trying to remember now which way I had it. That goes to there. I know that much because that's why the mark is there. And this, pretty sure this board used the other screws. And that's done up. Now this goes like that. And that should be our completed power supply module. Now we can hook the terminals up. So over here in Australia, brown is active, and you can remember that because that's the colour your pants will be if you touch it. Neutral is blue, onto the neutral, and our earth onto the earth pin. So that's our power supply module, ready to go. Then we've got our backplane here, and the problem I had with the backplane is I'd made the assumption, you know what they say about assumptions, that the board would fit one of these sort of Euro style enclosures, and it actually doesn't. The backplane is the same size as the cards, other way. So it's the same width as the cards, but the cards go in the chassis. So what that meant was that without these horrible looking extenders, for want of a better word, that I've created that bolt on, this board would have done exactly what this board would do and just fall straight through the gap. So yeah, I got these little extension plates made that just bolt on. It's a bit ugly, but it'll do the job. So we can put our power supply module in. That goes in from the back and goes in on this rail. We can, that's in, yep. And somehow I managed to get the holes not quite properly lined up. I don't know how I managed to, it might be slightly out of alignment here. Just give ourselves a little bit of wiggle, that's better. Give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room. Yeah, somehow I managed to get these holes ever so slightly out. I don't know quite how I managed to do that, but I did. But they're not so far out that they don't fit. They're just annoying. Just like. That's in. And I think now would be a prudent time to hook the earth up before we forget to do that. And I made the earth lead extra long so that I can take the power supply module out with the earth still connected. Sorry, it's a bit hard to get a camera in there and a tool, but we'll see how we go. Right, and that's done up. So we're earthed to the chassis as well now. So next up, we'll put the back plane in. Set the power cable down through the middle. Where's my washers? Right, so these are, the hole spacing is also slightly out like it was for the other board. Not quite sure how I managed to do that, but it's just tight, it's not impossible. Kind of bugs me that these aren't spaced evenly, but I'll try it in a minute, but I don't think I will get a screw. No, the spacing's just slightly too far out. I won't get a screw in the next hole over, so I will just have to live with it spaced the way it is. If I'd realised that this backplane board was too narrow way back when I got it done, I would have actually extended it to suit the backplane, but I didn't realise until about a week ago when I went to put it together. And yeah, I'm not redoing the backplane. Those connectors are too expensive and they're too hard to desolder, so I don't want to redo it. I'll just do these up. And normally there'd be a power switch mounted here on the other side of the backplane. I've just got a wire jumper across that because I've got a power switch over on the power supply, so I don't need a separate power switch on the backplane. Right, and that backplane is pretty rigid in there. So, turn it over and we can connect our power here to our power supply. And before we get too much further, it's probably prudent to put some power on this and make sure that we're getting the voltages that we expect to get and the power supply doesn't go bang, because the last thing we want to do is, where can I put that where you can see it? Yeah, the last thing we want to do is blow our processor board up. So first things first, we'll do a couple of sanity checks. Meter's working. We've got the switch in the off position at the moment, so we will see to our earth lug. Yep, so our earth is good. We have no active to neutral shorts, and we don't have any shorts to earth. Turn the power connector on, or power switch on, and I expect our earth is still good. Yep. And we have no shorts anywhere. I'm surprised we don't have some resistance active to neutral, but we don't have a short, that's the main thing, so it shouldn't go bang when I wonder if there's a fuse in there. I should check that. There is a fuse. Let's just see if it's a good fuse. And it is. Oops, upside. Which way up? That way. Rightio. So we should be okay to plug it in. It's plugged in and it did not go bang. That's a good start. Turn it on. And I've used this power supply before, so there's no reason it should have an issue. So far so good. We didn't blow any fuses, I don't think. So let's just see. Thought I heard something there. I don't know if it was just something on the desk or something going pop. Ooh. We have no output voltage. And I hear fizzing. Well, that's not good. Okay, so what went on there? This is why we check these things. Let me do a little bit of digging, and I'll come back when I know a little bit more. Okay, so it's the next day. I had a bit of a poke with the power supply. I couldn't find an issue with it. I thought maybe there was a dicky joint on the back of the board or a fractured component or something along those lines. Couldn't find a problem. So I'm suspicious that it might possibly be this bottom connector here. The pins in this bottom connector do sit through the board about 1 millimetre further than these other ones, so maybe it just wasn't making good contact. And I had the backplane, which is plugged in at the top now. I had it plugged in at the bottom before, so I have to keep an eye on that. These plugs and sockets were recovered from an old circuit board, so yeah, the pins might have been knocked out of alignment during that process. The other thought was maybe it was the power cord I had before, which was a bit of a dodgy, horrible looking power cord. I mean, it seemed all right, but I don't know. But I've had this power supply running for a good part of today, and I haven't been able to fault it. So we'll just plug it in. Drop the cord in the back. It's plugged in. Turn it on, and we've got 5.129 volts. Now, something I did find, this power supply, switch mode power supply, doesn't like, or doesn't regulate properly without a load on it, which is not uncommon for switch mode power supplies, but modern ones, at least my understanding is that modern ones tend to be more forgiving of that. But in any case, I've put a 16 ohm resistor across the output just to put some load on it, and it seems to be regulating. I mean, it's a little bit above 5 volts, but it's, you know, it's regulating pretty well. So at this point, I think I can turn it back off, disconnect the meter. I can unplug the dummy load, and we're probably at the point where we can start putting the cards back in. There's the floppy controller card, and floppy, and actually this one is just floppy, I think from memory, or does it do IDE? That's floppy. Oh, and that's the shoe card connector. Yeah, I think it does IDE on the end. So that can go in this last slot and push home. And that's our processor card, 10 megahertz Z80. That can go in and push home. And in the coming, well, weeks, maybe months, depending on how long it takes me to get all the parts, I think I might have mentioned before, but we've got the RAM floppy card. We've got an SD card interface, and we have a 6445 based video card with VGA output. So I've got most of the parts to make this. I think the major thing I'm missing is the 6445. So when payday rolls around, I will no doubt be placing an order for those remaining components. Similarly, these other two circuit boards, I've got most of the parts for them. Although I think the RAM floppy, I've got to buy all the RAM chips. I think, I could be wrong, but I think they were about $7 or $8 each. So I've got to buy those, and I've got to buy these these card connectors as well. I think they're about $10 each, so I've got to buy some of those. But yeah, so that's the state of play. We've got the cards in. This is going to be a bit of a problem with the connector out the front. We'll just unplug the power. I've also obviously got to make a cover, some covers, top, bottom and front, to go over the power supply, just to keep fingers out of the main side of it. The main side is down in the back here. Actually, it's pretty much everything from here back. But yeah, I just got to put some protection in for that. The power supply itself, I meant to mention earlier, came out of an old Cisco, either a Cisco switch or a router. I can't remember which one it was now. It's been a while since I took it out. It's made by Aztec, produces 5 volts, 12 volts, and minus 12, which is, and 3.3, which is pretty well spot on for what you might want for this sort of project. So it's pretty handy, that. So anyway, we've got the floppy drive there. We don't have the floppy cable, but I do have a power cable to put in. So we can put the power cable on the drive, and I've got a connector here for a hard drive that I may put an IDE hard drive in at some point. So I've got a power connector for that. And I'm not going to be able to turn this on its front. That's annoying. Because I've got this connector sticking out the front. Some clips that we can put under here just to tie this cable off to. I would have preferred some sort of nicer clips than these, but these are what I had, so that's what we will use. Yeah, that's it. Maybe I have to put it slightly at an angle just to get around that screw. Which I guess we'll have that problem up this end at some point one day when I put a card connector in these slots. We'll have that same problem up here. Magnetic screwdrivers are great until they're not. Right, now this goes down into the front, obviously, and we got some cable ties. We should be able to just tie these in. Do them up too tight yet because I have to position them appropriately. Screw's going to be a nuisance, but anyway. Okay, they can just sit there for the moment. And we'll go around to the front and we can plug our connector in, and I've put nice little bootlace pins on this just to make it nice and tidy. Same with the other connector. In that goes, and probably, if I can get my fingers in there. Just trying to neaten these cables up a little bit in here. Fiddlier than it looks. Right, so now we've got our cables in. We're in about the right spot. We've got enough length. We can go a little bit this way. And snip, snip, and snip. Next up, we'll plug the serial console cable in. there. Find our USB serial cable, plug that in. We'll jump over to the PC. I've got Secure CRT running. And we'll just jump into session. We'll flick the switch. And away we go. And we can boot into, so we'll go into Z system. And yeah, there we are. After all this time, the machine still works. The floppy drive's not connected. I mean, the power's connected, but I haven't got the data cable connected for it, so the floppy drive won't work at the moment. But yeah, the machine itself works just like it did before I put it in the case. So that's a good sign. I'll have to get on to finding a floppy drive cable, or finding the floppy drive cable that I had on it before. And we'll start building these other cards to put into it. So that's got our little Z80 system in a rack mount card cage. Sort of tidies it up, and there's no longer a collection of boards jammed into a backplane just sitting on a desk. So yeah, if you like that, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent to do that. And tickle that like button if you liked it. And yeah, we'll get into constructing some of these other interface cards and putting those in, and having some more fun with it. So yeah, until next time, cheers.